Thank you everyone for coming to my session. It's easy to create a good-looking product, but how about a useful one? My name is Eleftheria, and I am a community lead manager at Hashnode. You can find me on my social media. I'm very active on Twitter, so if you have any questions, and if you're a bit shy here, you can always find me later, either here or on social media. I also like to move a lot during my talks, but they told me that I should stand until this point, so yeah, sorry if I don't move a lot. Okay, and now I think that we are ready to start. So, in this talk, let me clarify a few things. We are not going to see any line of code, so no code here. If you're here for code, that's not your talk. And we are going to talk about UX and UI, UX like user experience and UI as user interface. But I guess that most of you are developers, engineers, right? Am I right? So you're probably not designers. So this talk is specifically for you because we're going to see some tips and tricks on how we can improve our products or something that we have in mind. Maybe we want to have a startup, but we don't have designers and researchers, so maybe we could do some things as developers. So this talk is about these people. Maybe you're a freelancer and your clients are asking you some design changes. Maybe you work at a startup and you don't have a dedicated designer or researcher. Again, this talk will be helpful for you. And now that we have clarified this, let's actually see what we will talk about. We will talk about UX and UI, and what we're going to do differently here in this talk is that we're going to demystify these two terms from the perspective of the user, but also the perspective of the developer/designer, because these things are different. Then we're going to talk about heuristics. What are they? How you can use the heuristics. We're going to see a lot of examples, and in the end, we're going to have some quick tips and tricks about UI and UX, and again, how you can improve your product, your idea, or whatever you have in mind. Okay, let's start with some examples. UX is everywhere. It's not just on websites or online products, and really everywhere. You may have seen some things like this, and if we go somewhere a bit closer to our heart, you probably have also seen something like that, or Now let's see some examples that are a bit closer to us and what most of us are probably doing. Maybe you have seen something like this. Which one would you choose for your product? Here I have the tick mark, so it's easy for you to find it. Also, this one, you probably have seen again something like that. And then there are some smaller details, but that's what makes UX what it is and UI what it is. Alignments or words versus the numbers. And by the way, if you're using Grammarly for text, it will say that the first option, discard two drafts, it's better than using the number, but no, we want the number. Okay, and now I think that we can actually start explaining what is UX and what is UI. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we will demystify these two terms from the perspective of the user and the perspective of the developer/designer. And I like to start with the basics, so that's what we are going to do here. And then we will see some examples and we will try to find solutions and better versions of those examples. Okay, so from the perspective of the user interface is what the user interacts with a product, what taps or clicks on, and the whole experience is localized in a device. And on the other hand, user experience is how a user interacts with the product, what the user feels when they are holding our product, and the whole experience is localized physically on our body. For example, if you are using an app and we are holding our phone, we can see the face of the other person, if they are happy, if they are angry, if they are moving their hands, probably something's wrong, or they are Italians. So there are some small things that we can understand just by watching someone else using our product. Now, from the designer's perspective or the developer's perspective, things are a little bit more complicated, so I started again with an analogy that I really like. When we see a huge icicle, we only see the tip of that icicle, but it's not only that. Underneath that tip, it's a whole big mountain, and it's the ice, it's the cold weather, it's the sea that holds everything together, so we just see this tip. That's something very, very similar with the UI design and the UX design as a developer. For the designer, user interface is what you can see and what interact with, but user experience is what you see alongside with what you don't see and what holds everything together. Okay, I think that now we have started to have a better feeling about what UX is, what UI is, but we will see some more details before we go to the examples. So what is UX, and this time from the user's perspective? It can be both objective and subjective. Keep in mind that UX has to do a lot with the satisfaction and ease of a product, how easy it is to use a product and how satisfactory it is to use that product. So it can be subjective. Does the user connect emotionally with the app? Are they cracking a smile when they are using our app? Are the icons and illustrations understandably enough? And is the user pleasantly surprised by an animation? Or I just added that animation because I liked it as a developer. And from the other hand, it can be objective. Does the user actually do what they want to do? And is the speed good enough? And what is more effective, like a tap, a click, something else? This is some design. This is some things that we have to think as developers to make our users happier. Okay, and now let's start with a few examples. Would you prefer to use a riding-sharing app, like Uber, Bolt, whatever you're using, that it doesn't show you in real time your location, your driver location, doesn't let you pay however you want to pay, doesn't let you save your favorite destinations? Or would you prefer another sharing app, very similar in the UI aspect, but it shows you your location in real time, your driver's location, you can pick up your friends, you can pay however you want, you can save your favorite destinations, and you can do all those things in just a few clicks. And I think here that the answer is obvious, but also I would like to mention something else, that when we have our product, because we are the developers, we are the designers, sometimes we are even the users, we think that we have the perfect product and the perfect app, the perfect service. Because we have developed that product, we can do everything very fast. Sometimes we don't see the bugs. But what if we give our product to someone else and ask them, something simple like, can you do that? Can you book the tickets via my app? Can you shop a pair of shoes with my app? How easy can they do it? How fast can they do it? And if they are your friends and maybe your partner, they will say, yeah, you have the perfect app, go for that. But what if you give your product to your ex-partner or your mother-in-law? Will they say the same things? So test, always test. Whatever you're doing, test with real people, with real users. And real users are not you, are not your friends. They are other people, probably outside of your circle. So why is UX important? Because at its core, it's putting people before technology. We do care about people. We don't care about technology. And you know that your user doesn't care if you use React or JavaScript or Python. They just want to see the end result. The focus is always on create positive experience, and the result is a win-win situation for your company, for you, for your user. Okay, now you may be thinking, what does a UX designer do? And I will give you a very, very quick history lesson. I'm promising it's going to be quick. So it all started with this man right here, Don Norman. He started as an electrical engineer, and then he did a master's in psychology. And then he started working at Apple, and now we have Apple as it is today. He's the pioneer of UX, and he's the pioneer because he was the first person that observed, the keyword here is observed, how people interact and use technological products. And before that, yes, we did have technological products, but the design and the UX was really not there. You had to have some specific knowledge in order to use those products. So he is the person that changed everything, and even in Apple today, we have it as we know it. He's the pioneer. So he also has a lot of books. He wrote a lot of books. This one is one of my favorite books, and you can find it for free if you Google a little bit. You don't have to have some specific knowledges, like you don't have to be a designer to understand this book. It's a really cool book, and I totally recommend it. Okay, that was the history lesson, and now let's go to my initial question, which was, what does a UX designer or researcher do? They're doing a bunch of things, really a bunch of things. So I have in this pyramid some of those things that are the most crucial, but it's not only those things. And I will start from bottom to top. So we have user research and analysis, content strategy, information architecture, interaction design, and visual design. I have also a lot of details about each of these steps. I'm not going to read everything right now, but if any of you wants that, you can ask me about my presentation later, and I will give it to you so you can see the details. But for example, in the first step, in the bottom layer, the user research and analysis, we have things such as user interviews, behavior studies, focus groups, and when we have all those things, then we will move on with creating user personas, etc., etc. So we have a lot of things. Again, I will just pass those things. And now we covered UX, but what about UI? UI, so user interface. A lot of people, when they hear the term like UI, they will think buttons, maybe colors, maybe images, and maybe some of them typography. But I'm here to tell you that it's not only this. It's not only colors, it's not only images, it's not only icons. It's more than that. And I'm here to prove my case. We have like these small things. We shout or we speak to those small things. They give us answers. And this is UI. It's another kind of UI, but it is UI. It's an audible UI. And from the other hand, we also have something like this that probably all of you have seen and used. It can be textual as well. Here our focus is not on colors. Our focus is not on what we are going to click, what we are going to tap. It's not on the typography. We want just simple stuff. But this is also a form of UI. It's a textual form of UI. Okay, now that we got that, we can answer the same question, what does a UI designer do? This time I have the same pyramid as before, but the UI designer will focus on the top two layers, so the interaction design and the visual design. Again, here I have some details. I'm not going to go through this stuff. Okay, let's not forget about this, that as a designer/developer, you have to have an open mind and think about the future sometimes and the responsiveness and other stuff like that, okay? Cool, we have UX, we have UI, we demystified those two things. If I want you to remember something, that UI cannot exist without UX. UI is part of UX. And sometimes we see on job applications that someone will look for a UI designer. And then when you start reading the details, you will notice that they are not just looking for a UI designer. They are looking for a researcher, they're looking for a UX person, and then they are looking for a UI designer. Or even worse, if you are a developer, usually a web developer or front-end developer, and you start reading the specifications of a job application, you will notice that they actually are not looking only for a developer, but they are looking for a UI designer, a UX researcher, and you have to wear a lot of hats. Which personally I don't think it's possible, but we can try that. Okay, let's go to the second part, which is heuristics. What are heuristics, why we need them, and here is where we're going to see a lot of examples as well. I have a quote here from Don Norman that I really like, and it says, good design is actually a lot harder to notice than poor design, in part because good design fits our needs so well, the design is invisible. When something is so good, we don't even notice it. But when it's bad, we have to give a lot of feedback, a lot of critiques, right? Okay, so heuristics. Heuristics is making decisions with information that we already have. And although there are numerous heuristics and numerous ways for evaluations, we are only going to check here today the last column, heuristic analysis, because this is the easier, and we have a specific set of rules, and if we follow these rules, then we guarantee we'll have a better product. So let's see that, let's do that. We have 10 simple rules. These rules are not coming by me, by no way. These rules are coming from Don Norman and Jacob Nielsen, the two fathers of UX, and they were manifested in 1995. Let's start with these 10 rules, right? The first one is visibility of system status. Show to your users the things that they need to see. For example, when we light up our phone, the first thing that we will see is probably time, date, notifications, the status bar, like internet and stuff like that. Now, imagine someone taking everything away and you don't see the time, you don't see the date, you don't see your notifications. You would feel kind of naked, right? We want those stuff. And that's the thing with your users as well. They want to see the stuff. They don't want to see too much stuff, but they want to see a few basic stuff. So that was the first rule. The second one is a match between the system and the real world. Your users are probably using other products 90% of their time, and maybe, if you are lucky, they will devote 10% of their time using your product. Don't try to change everything, because they know how things work based on other applications, based on other services, so you don't want to change everything. If you have like a compass, a bin, a folder, don't try to make something new. Use the things that we already know and we are already using. Let's go to rule number 3, which is user control and freedom. Either we want it or not, our users will make mistakes, and we will go to mistakes in a little bit as well. But every time we should have a clear emergency exit. Is it an X button, a go back button, maybe refresh, I don't know, something, but always have something there, because your users will make mistakes. It's not because that you don't have a nice product, but maybe it's because they are in a hurry, maybe they didn't read something, so always provide that. Let's go to the fourth one, which is one of my favorites. I have 2 favorites, so this is the first one. It's consistency and standards. Again, just because something is different, it doesn't mean that it's perfect, it's cool, it's magic. No, as I said earlier, if something is okay and people know how to use that, you don't have to change it in your product. Maybe you have a cool idea, yes, that's perfect, but don't try to change everything. For example, if you have a delete action, use always the word delete. Don't just go with delete and then erase, and then an X button or something else. If for the delete action you have a black bin, an icon with a black bin, use always that same icon. Don't try to change everything. And use always the same things, the same words, the same colors, the same everything in this case. The fifth one is error prevention. I talked earlier about that just a bit, but let's talk a little bit about errors, because again, our users will make errors. Now, there are 2 kinds of errors. There are sleeps and mistakes. The first one, the sleeps, is the one that we actually talked about. Slips is when your users will make mistakes because they were in a hurry, maybe they didn't treat very well something. So, okay, we will have that emergency exit button, so everything will be all right for them. But about the second one, which is the actual mistakes, here the problem is not on them, but the problem is on us as developers or designers. It means that we haven't think something very well, and that's why our users are making mistakes. And if you notice that pattern, then I would suggest you go back with your team and try to figure out why something is not working as it should work. Probably there is because we didn't do something well, not because of our users. And that's harder to fix. The next one, the sixth rule, is recognition rather than recall. We always want recognition. So again, our memory has two types. One of them is recognition and the other one is recall. So for recognition is when we don't actually have to think about something, it's always on our mind, or it's easy to retrieve that. When we pick up a card, we know it's a card. But if we have to think about a date, if we have to think about a name, that's recall. And we don't want recall. And we see that a lot of time when we have to search about something. How do we do that? If we have underneath that a table with some options, that's great, and that's recognition. But if we let the user type something completely on their own, that's recall, and we don't want that. I think that Coursera does a really good job here, and that's why I have this example as well. Always give your users something that it will be easier for them to remember, and they won't have to think. So show them icons, maybe images, maybe colors, or whatever you think it's useful for them, so they really don't have to think. And small parenthesis here, also Don Norman has a book, Don't Make Me Think, and it's about the users and how we shouldn't make them think. Everything should be very, very easy for them. Okay, let's go to the seventh rule, which is flexibility and efficiency of use. On our products, again, hopefully we will have a lot of users, right? But not all of those users have the same skills. Some of them will be first-time users, some of them will be very experienced users, and of course you have everything in between. You want to provide something for everyone. So for the first-time users, maybe you want things to be simple, maybe you want to show some documentation, maybe you want like small steps. But for your power users, like the users that are using a lot your product, maybe you want things to be fast. Again, you want everything to be clear, and of course people shouldn't have to double check something. Maybe you want extensibility, maybe you want to connect your product with other products. All these things are for your power users. And again, as I said, you also have the people in the middle. So try to provide something for everyone. If you are using your product, probably because you have developed that product, you belong to the power user. So try to give it, as I said earlier, to your mother-in-law, to your ex-partner or something, and they will be your first-time users, and see how they will use it. If they have some difficulties, that's something that you should fix. Okay, and now let's go to the eighth one, which is aesthetic and minimal design. This is my second favorite, okay? Let's try to simplify things. Sometimes we have a lot of energy and we say, yes, I will add that red color and that green color and this typeface, and I will do everything big, but this very, very small because I don't want everyone to read that. And we are so excited about things. No, again, let's calm down. Let's take a step back again. My biggest suggestion here is if you are not feeling very comfortable with the design, use white color. Use a lot of white color. You don't want all those fancy colors. Also, something very, very important, use a bigger font size than you think is right. Okay, go with a big font size. A lot of people have eye problems, so let's help them. Maybe focus on the contrast when we are talking about colors. So there are some small things like white color, font size, good contrast that you should absolutely keep in mind. And then if you're feeling more comfortable with what you already have, then yes, of course, try to experiment, do some crazy stuff or whatever. But if not, keep these things in mind. The 9th rule, help users recognize, diagnose, and recover from errors. We already talked about errors, but this is a bit different. Stuff will happen, our users will make mistakes, as we already said, but always try to give them something in order to recover from that error. And I have here 2 examples which I guess most of you will have seen. So the first one is really not good. Even if you are a developer, probably you won't understand what this is all about. But about the second one, for example, if we have to upload an image on a system and our user is uploading a PNG and our system doesn't work with PNGs, then we can say, okay, this is a PNG, we don't accept that, please upload this, this, or this. There are some other good examples as well. So yeah, I'm not going to mention that, but there are a lot of examples in that, and I'm sure that for your system you can think of something that it will work very, very well. And of course, if we don't want to be on that stage and we want to upload, let's say, an image, we could say we only accept this kind of images, so the user won't even see that message. And the 10th and last rule is help and documentation. We want to have like really good products and everything should be easy, but because we have also a lot of users and sometimes a lot of first-time users, it's good to have documentation, it's good to have support. Now, our documentation and our support system should be simple. It shouldn't use many technical words. Even if you are doing something technical, everyone should be able to understand it. And when we're talking about documentation and support, we don't want long text, just simple things. And Slack, I believe that Slack is doing a really good job there. Trello is doing a really good job there. They are giving you just some small prompts that they will really help you. And documentation is not only for the first-time users, but it's also for the users that maybe they want to do something extra. So maybe they are your advanced, your power users, and they want to search for something. Do things in a simple way, and everyone will be happy. Okay, these were our 10 rules, and now we will move on to the next part, which are some tips and tricks about UX. And you can pick your side. We will do some good tips and some things that you shouldn't really do. So, don't assume you know what users want. Never do that. That's why we need to observe people. If you have the chance to really see how your users interacting with your product, really watch them, observe them. Don't just listen to them. Really try to watch them and observe them. Don't follow the hippo at the room, and hippo stands for the highest paid person's opinion. So yes, your boss maybe is paying you, and that's all good and nice, but you should be able to say your opinion loud and clear. Do make the time and effort for user research. Don't just create a list of methods to check off. It's not a to-do list. Really pay attention, and don't prototype too soon. Oops, here is a mistake, okay. Do focus on what people do rather than what they say, and that's where observing people comes in. If you can only do one thing, do conduct user testing, and I hope with this whole talk it will be a little bit easier for you to conduct user testing. And don't overlook existing insight from customer care representatives. Also something very important here, if you have the chance to take a look at your support system, or I don't know, maybe your product has already support, maybe they don't have support, or if there is feedback from users, maybe your role isn't to do that, to watch or read the support and the feedback, but really do take some time to read those stuff, because you will notice things that you didn't know about your product. Again, because you are developing your thing, your service, your app, whatever. You know everything perfectly, but your users doesn't know those things as well as you do. So you will find things that you weren't expecting. And very recently, as I said, I work at Hashnode. Hashnode is a free blogging platform. Recently, I had the chance to actually see what people are asking on our support systems. And I thought that everything was clear. But then when I saw what they were asking, I understood, okay, we have to take a step back. We have to fix some things. And if I hadn't done that, if I hadn't checked our support system or the feedback system, I would never have realized those things. So I encourage you to do the same if you have the chance. Do collaborate. You are not alone, and I think that you already know that. And do find someone qualified to do your research, or again, hopefully after this talk, you will be a little bit more qualified to do it by yourself. And let's move on to our last part, which is the good and the bad of UI. This will be a small test for you. Again, we will see some good things and some bad things, and you can think of yourself in which side you belong. Okay, so I have another quote here, but I will skip that one. The designer's mindset. The good one listens to everyone from decision makers, team members, and stakeholders, whereas the bad one judges and suggests solutions all the time. You can pick your side. The good one questions the status quo and digs deep to find out real problems and needs, whereas the bad one follows the rule we've always done it that way and tries to fix symptoms only. The good one takes time to ask about what is missing and is always uncertain about their findings, whereas the bad one follows their assumptions and is always certain about their work. The good one has many solutions and ideas and tries always to find issues and flaws in their work, whereas the bad one has only ideas to invest their time and effort to convince everyone and always defends their work. I don't know if this sounds familiar. The good one loves to be wrong and seeks feedback, whereas the bad one loves to be always right and seeks praise. The good one leads and the bad one follows. That was it. If you have any questions, I would love to answer them. Otherwise, thank you very much.